Welcome to 12-Minute HR Lesson. Today we're going to cover off, in a slightly strange way, the most important rule is that people don't forget what you do, people don't forget what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to ask you to think, how would this make other people feel if the employee involved was their grandmother? Curious? Let's go. I was going to record something else today. I had something scheduled, but this came up in which an old colleague was asking me something. And I said, well, what's the harm? And as I was thinking it, I went, yeah, well, it's the grandma test, isn't it? And then I went, I haven't talked to people about the grandma test. We need to talk about the grandma test. So let's talk about it. Before we get to the grandma test, I'm going to talk to you about a different circumstance. I'm going to talk to you about something that's happened to me and something that may have happened to you. This is going back a couple of years. A distant relative of mine called me in to help out in a particular situation. They were off on parental leave, and they were being told things that were just firing off alarm bells of, oh, don't worry, when you come back, you'll just go back into the pool. We'll just find a space for you when you get back. And she was getting a bit worried, and I was getting a bit worried. Going, that doesn't sound sufficiently safe. That, we'll find something for you when you get back. No, you need to provide the job that they walked out of is the problem. So I went along to the meeting and it was all very amicable and they promised and they were very reasonable. Oh no, definitely. Don't worry. Your job will be safe. But guess what? She went off, came back. We don't really have anything for you. Well, you're going to be made redundant. And I was seething. But my relative didn't want to pursue it. And that was her choice. But to this day, I'm still frustrated because I shouldn't have allowed someone to treat my family member like that. I felt complicit in that. Essentially a betrayal. They made a promise. They didn't think it through. It was a little bit of a Hanlon's razor, if you recall Hanlon's razor, where it's not that they intended. In that room, I have every certainty that they weren't even entertaining the possibility that we were worried about. And guess what? It actually did happen. It was their disorganization, not their intention, that led to my relative missing out, losing a job, and then arguably losing a good chunk of her career as a consequence. It still bugs me, it still irks me that someone did that to my family, to my cousin. In essence, that is the grandma test. A quick interruption here from a word from our sponsor, which is essentially us. This podcast is part of Pragmatic HRM. Pragmatic HRM is primarily an HR training organization. Like this podcast is here to give you little ideas to make you smarter, wiser, more understanding. We have that, but much larger in our training courses. We train across a wider range of HR and ER topics, all with the idea of not just telling you what to do, but telling you how to understand the situations. Giving you wisdom, giving you insight, giving you new frames of reference so that we are teaching you how to fish. Primarily, we do this through our webinars. You can access our webinars online in a live session along with other people. Or alternatively, if the times don't suit, if they're too far away, you can also access our webinars pre-recorded at your convenience at a lower price as well. So have a look at our website, pragmatichrm.nz, all of our courses and all of our services. Anyway, back to your grandmother. The test is, imagine someone doing this to your grandmother. I pick grandma because that is the person who elicits the most sense of vulnerability, the most sense of protection. We wouldn't want that to happen to them in the workplace. So we set a very high expectation of how people should treat our grandmother. Now, you may think to yourself, I'd like to see them try pulling a Swiftie on my grandmother. I don't know your grandmother. Obviously, your results may vary. Your mileage may differ. But that is the person, generally speaking, that people will be most defensive about. They will think and they will react, hang on, you can't treat people like that. You can't treat my grandma like that. Now, the alternative argument is they're a big boy, they're a big girl, they can handle it, they've been around the block. If you talked about, I wouldn't want my dad to be treated like that, that brings in whole other things. If my dad can handle it, if you talk about your son, you're like, oh, well, my son might need a reality check, all those sorts of things. Grandma is the gold standard when it comes to the question of protectiveness. So the question still stands. The question is, are we treating people the way that we would want our grandmother treated? And when this person goes home and tells their family, will their family start to get defensive on their behalf? Now, obviously, there's a pretty good chance they're not going to tell a very complete or accurate picture. But when we step out of the situation that we are in, are we being fair and reasonable to an outside observer? Let me give you a situation in which we can accidentally, unintentionally look from the outside like we're not doing the right thing. We're not being fair. We're not being clear. We're not communicating well. We're leaving people in the dark, and that's leading them to get worried, leading to anxiety. One of the things that you sometimes see is people asking for things, and we get defensive or not sure. Therefore, we get a little bit, I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. I'm not sure, therefore, my default is to not to provide or not to tell or withhold. The question is, how does that look? How does that look for them? Because there's always a risk. The cover-up can be worse than the crime. The withholding of information can make the information seem more dramatic. Currently at the moment in the US, there's drama over Epstein files. And probably it will turn out that what was actually in the information that's not being released is a bit of a damp squib. It's not actually that much to it. Or not. I'll be curious to see. I could listen to this back in a year's time and go, oh, no, I got that one wrong. But here's the point. The default is to not give things away that you don't know what they mean. But that can look worse. The minor version of the grandma test is, well, how does it look like to the other person when you don't do something that is quite reasonable? If someone asks for notes of the meeting and you're not sure about giving them, so you don't, how does that look to them? Well, you took notes. I wanted to know what's being held against me on my file. You know the notes are pretty rubbish. You're pretty minor, generally irrelevant. You're not too sure that you filled them out perfectly. You meant to come later and touch up and fill in some gaps that you didn't, and therefore now it's too late. You know it's not a big issue, but they don't know that. From the outside looking in, this looks like a problem. This looks bigger than it actually is, and the fact that you're not providing just max of unfairness. So the question is, how does it look like to them? How does it look like to their grandson? At its heart, the grandma test is, does this look unfair? Does this look unreasonable? There will be some things that are substantive that you can't change, but there are going to be some processes or some steps that you could change. Probably the biggest opportunity for you to make this accidentally look worse than it is by not communicating and providing as much information as you possibly can, withholding information just in case. You don't want to over-communicate, therefore you under-communicate, and that looks unfair. That looks hard for the person, and it looks hard for anyone else from the outside looking in. The employee who is going through a difficult situation, be it performance or misconduct in the workplace, is out there talking to people. Maybe they're lawyers, maybe they're union rep, but generally it's going to be their family. What is their family telling them? And they will look for and ask for, well, are they telling you this? Where is this? And when the person says, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm quite confused, that doesn't look fair, does it? We tend to get preoccupied by the facts. What people tend to get worried about and angsty about and upset and defensive about is the process. Do they know what's going on? Do they know what you think? Do they know everything that it is? If you don't need to withhold, unless there's a good reason, over-communicate. Provide all the information, because at the end of the day, the biggest drama that you will have is not whether or not you made a procedural error. It's about whether or not the person felt that they were treated unfairly. Did it feel instinctively unfair to them or their family? I may have completely missed the mark on this one. Your grandmother may have been the toughest, strongest, no holds barred, take no drama from no one person there is. Whereas it might be your grandfather who was the absolute sweetheart that would just say yes, the people pleaser. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of my grandmother who was an absolute sweetheart. Anyway, hopefully you get the point. Hopefully you get the gist of it. Everybody's slightly different, but if there's a stereotype of a sweet person that we all need to look after, it's grandmothers. Anyway, thank you for listening. Please have a look at our website. We've got a bunch of services. We've got a bunch of courses. We've got a bunch of articles that are quite useful, something for you to go away and have a look at. We tend to cover a range of topics in addition to this podcast. So the podcast is the most intense way in which we help people think. It's the most in your ear, so to speak. But we also have lots of articles, dozens and dozens, maybe up to 100 by now, of different types of articles to help you look and refine your HR practices. Give you those little aha moments like this one. The idea of this one is that you go, this person seems to be a bit angsty. This person seems to be a bit stressed about what's going on. Let's quickly apply the grandma test. That's what I want you to take away from these podcasts. If you're not going to look at our website, that's not a problem. Please repost us and share us and like us in the various social media that we put these podcasts out on. Helps other people get these ideas. They can have these little aha moments that we're looking for to spread. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time.